It started with a football game, neighbors outside, kids walking to a nearby community center. Nothing about that afternoon felt dangerous until one split-second decision changed everything. A known Diamond Street gang member pulled out a gun and opened fire down a residential block. The target wasn't clear. The motive wasn't deep, but the consequences were permanent. An innocent child was caught in the middle of something he had nothing to do with. This is the case of Roberto Lopez Jr. and the gang member whose actions shook an entire city. It's January 13th, 2009, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. On Bixel Street, the sun's still up, and a group of young guys are just out there doing what young guys do. Running routes, cracking jokes, talking trash, playing football in the middle of the block like the street belongs to them. One of the guys out there is 24-year-old Wilhelm Townsend. For a little while, Astorga is out there too. Townsend knows him by his street name, Doper. Everybody around there knows Doper. He's Diamond Street gang, and Diamond Street pretty much stamped their name on that whole neighborhood. That's their turf, their walls, their light poles, their rules. The game goes on for over an hour. Nothing crazy, just regular neighborhood energy. Then, around 4:25 p.m., everything flips. Townsend notices a red car coming down the street fast. Not just rolling through, flying, maybe 30, 40 miles per hour. Too fast for a narrow residential block where kids and families live. He clocks the driver too, a racer-looking dude with spiked up hair. As the car blows past, the whole mood shifts. You can feel it. Somebody in the group yells for the driver to slow down, but then another voice cuts through the air with something darker. Shoot that fool, and that's all it takes. Astorga reaches for a grayish-black semi-automatic and starts firing. 5, maybe 6 shots, back to back. No hesitation. Townsend is clear about one thing. Nobody else in that group pulls a gun. Not one. And the guy in the red car, he never fires back, never flashes a weapon, never does anything except drive. It's a one-sided explosion of violence. A football game turns into a shooting scene in seconds. Townsend doesn't hear any other gunfire, just Astorga's rounds. He can't say for sure if any bullets hit the car, but once the shots stop, the quiet doesn't last long. Screams cut through the block, and in a moment that feels almost unreal, right after the chaos, Astorga starts singing about Rodney King, beat it like a cop, like it's all a joke, like somebody's life didn't just change forever. Townsend jumps in his car and speeds off at first, instinct, survival, but something pulls him back. About 5 minutes later, he circles around. This time the street looks different. There's a crowd gathered on the sidewalk, people standing frozen, some crying, some yelling. In the middle of it all is a young boy lying on the ground. That boy is Roberto Lopez Jr. He wasn't part of the football game, wasn't in a gang, wasn't arguing with anybody. He had just been walking to a community center a few doors down with his 6-year-old sister. Just a kid on a regular afternoon. One stray bullet catches him in the chest. He's rushed to Children's Hospital Los Angeles in critical condition. Doctors fight for him, but he doesn't make it. Police later make it clear, this is an innocent child caught in the crossfire of gang violence. Wrong place, wrong time. And that's the part that hits the hardest. Investigators comb the scene. They recover 3 cartridge casings near where the shots were fired. Close to where Roberto fell, they find 2 bullets from a .380 semi-automatic. Forensic testing later shows that organic material on one of those bullets matches Roberto's DNA. Even the location tells its own story. The top of the hill on Bixel Street, right where the shots rang out, is covered in Diamond Street graffiti. Tags everywhere, and on a light pole, clear as day, the name Doper is written out like a signature. Then there's Gina. Her story starts shifting almost immediately. On the day of the shooting, she gives a recorded statement saying the shots came from a red truck. Firm about it, certain. The very next day, she changes everything. Now she says she didn't actually see anyone with a gun, doesn't know who shot Roberto. That kind of flip doesn't go unnoticed. By January 14th, you can feel the shift. Law enforcement turns the heat all the way up. Nearly 50 detectives flood the neighborhood, moving door to door, knocking, asking questions, handing out flyers. They're telling residents, if you saw anything at all, call us, text us, email us. However you want to reach out, just do it. The message is clear. They can't solve this alone. They need the community. January 15th, 2009. Just 2 days after that little boy lost his life, police finally catch up with Astorga while he's sitting in a car with his wife. They detain him right there. By midnight, he's booked for the murder of Roberto Lopez Jr. But this wasn't luck. This was pressure building from every direction. Law enforcement wasn't playing around. It wasn't just LAPD working the case. LA school police were tapped in. State parole was involved. The FBI stepped in. Even ICE was part of the mix. Everybody had their eyes on this one. When a 4-year-old gets killed walking to a community center, the whole system locks in. When they searched Astorga's car, they found a photo of his wife throwing up Diamond Street gang signs. That alone told a story. But the real evidence was waiting at his house. Inside, officers found a backpack tagged up with graffiti, including a diamond symbol. In that bag were blue jean shorts and a white muscle shirt. They also recovered a pair of white Michael Jordans, a blue baseball cap with a D logo, and another photo showing 3 Diamond Street members posted up together. To investigators, it wasn't random fashion. It was uniform. Police believed Astorga was the one who pulled the trigger, but they weren't done. They were still looking for whoever else was out there that afternoon. When interrogation started, Astorga tried to stay cool. He denied even being on Bixel Street when the shooting happened. Then he brought up something unexpected. He mentioned that his mother and brother had been hit by a car the week before, almost like he was planning sympathy, almost like he was trying to build a cloud of confusion. But as the questioning went on, the pressure cracked him. He admitted he fired the shots at the red car. What stood out, though, was this. After he confessed, he never tied the shooting to what happened to his family. No revenge story, no emotional breakdown, just an admission that he pulled the trigger. Captain Egan from LAPD said the break in the case didn't just fall in their lap. It came from a flood of tips. People were calling in, texting in. One person even walked straight into Central Station to speak with an officer face to face. They were juggling information from all angles, but it gave them enough confidence to publicly name Astorga as the shooter. Deputy Chief Sergio Diaz laid everything out at a pre-dawn press conference. He made it clear that Astorga, known on the street as Dopey, wasn't new to the system. His rap sheet stretched long: grand theft auto, drug charges, weapons violations. His first arrest came when he was just 10 years old. He had only been back out on the street since June 2008, after serving time for a parole violation. Less than a year later, a child was dead. Around 11:30 p.m., the phone call the Lopez family had been waiting for finally came. Detective Fred Faustino from the Rampart Homicide Unit delivered the news that a suspect was in custody. The family felt relief, gratitude, but none of that erased the pain. Their little boy was still gone. On January 23, 2009, the doors of the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Angels opened wide, and the place filled up fast. Hundreds of family members, friends, neighbors, people from every corner of the community came to say goodbye to 4-year-old Roberto Lopez Jr. Inside, the air felt heavy, the kind of heavy that sits on your chest. At the front stood Roger M. Mahoney, speaking directly to a room full of grieving faces. He reminded everyone that children are precious, that their lives should never be taken for granted. He told the crowd that the responsibility didn't end with this funeral. The family would need help carrying this pain. A 12-person choir sang as the mass was conducted in Spanish. The music echoed off the high ceilings, soft but powerful. Mahoney urged everyone to reflect on how short life can be, to hold on to faith, to try and find some kind of comfort in the belief that there's a bigger plan, even when it doesn't make sense. Near the white draped casket sat a photo of Roberto. In it, he wore a black cowboy hat, smiling like any other happy kid. Looking at that picture, it was almost impossible to connect it to the violence that brought everyone there. Merlet Victorio, a close friend of Roberto's grandmother, summed up what many were feeling. It just felt wrong. A child with his whole life ahead of him gone because of gang violence. No explanation makes that fair. Outside the service, a relative, Juan Gonzalez, spoke with KABC-TV. His frustration was clear. Yes, police had made an arrest, but that didn't change the reality. Roberto wasn't coming back. Justice doesn't rewind time. Back inside, the family sat together, trying to stay strong. His parents were still struggling to process how one man's decision could erase their son's future. His uncle, Armando Gonzalez, wanted people to remember who Roberto really was. A funny little boy who loved to dance and could sit for hours playing video games, not just a headline, not just a victim. If there was any light in that dark room, it came from the support. Another relative, Nora Noriega, spoke about how powerful it was to see the neighborhood and the city show up like this. In the middle of devastation, the community had rallied. It showed how deeply Roberto was loved. As the mass came to a close, Mahoney didn't just offer comfort. He pushed for action. According to Todd Tamberg, the message was clear. Honoring Roberto's memory meant standing together against gang violence, not just praying about it, doing something. Mahoney was already working on a letter to LAPD, clergy, and community leaders, looking for real steps to make the neighborhood safer. Not promises, plans. The tragedy wasn't new to the area. Just 2 years earlier, another child had been killed by gang crossfire while standing in her own kitchen in Angelino Heights. That history lingered in the background of every prayer spoken that day. Councilman Ed Reyes attended the service too. He placed the responsibility on everyone's shoulders. The funeral wasn't the finish line. The real test would be what happened in the weeks and months after, whether the anger and grief would turn into lasting change or slowly fade away. He reminded the crowd that each person has influence in their own circle. Families, friends, neighbors. Change starts there. After the service, Roberto was laid to rest at Calvary Cemetery in East Los Angeles. He left behind his parents, Roberto and Araceli, and his 2 siblings. Now, when the trial for Astorga finally got rolling, it didn't feel like a mystery anymore. It felt like a pile-on. The evidence stacked up high, and piece by piece, the courtroom started replaying that afternoon on Bixel Street. First up was Gina. She took the stand and admitted that on the day of the shooting, she believed a red truck was involved. But that belief didn't come from her own eyes. It came from her 4-year-old cousin. She made it clear she never actually saw who fired the shots. That detail mattered. It showed how fast confusion spreads when bullets start flying. Then came the eyewitnesses. And this is where things got real heavy for the defense. Both Townsend and Eusebio pointed straight at Astorga. They had already identified him in a photo lineup. Now they did it again in open court. No hesitation. Same man, same shooter. Eusebio's testimony carried an extra layer of fear. She told the court that months after the shooting, in November 2009, somebody approached her from behind, pressed a gun behind her ear, and threatened her. The message was clear. She was told she was the reason Dopey was locked up. And if anything happened to him in jail, there would be consequences. That wasn't just intimidation. That was a reminder of the kind of pressure hanging over this case. Then came the part nobody could ignore. Astorga had already admitted he opened fire on that red car. He told investigators he believed 3 of his shots hit it and 1 missed wide. He also said he was the only one shooting. Nobody else in his group had a weapon out. And here's the part that hit hardest. He admitted the people in that car were regular people, not rivals, not gang members, just people driving through. The prosecution didn't rely on his confession alone. 2 eyewitnesses who knew him personally said they saw him firing at the car. They were clear. They didn't see anyone else with a gun. Townsend, who had been playing football with him minutes before, described how everything escalated. A car speeds past, somebody yells for it to slow down, another voice shouts to shoot, then Astorga pulls a semi-automatic and starts firing, and the physical evidence lined up with those words. Bullet casings were found where he had been standing. Bullets were recovered near where Roberto fell. One of those rounds carried DNA that matched the child. The scene itself told a story too. That stretch of Bixel Street was stamped with Diamond Street graffiti, and right there on a light pole was Astorga's own tag, Doper, sitting in plain sight like a signature on the block. To explain the bigger picture, the prosecution called Officer Jonathan Campbell to the stand. He wasn't just any officer. He was a veteran gang expert who knew Diamond Street inside and out. He described him as proud, but that pride came with a record full of criminal threats, robberies, narcotic sales, attempted murders, and murders. He even referenced cases where members were locked up over threats alone. Then he broke down the mindset. In that world, respect is everything. Respect equals strength. Showing respect means aligning with the gang's authority. Disrespect, even something as small as speeding through their turf, can be treated like a challenge. And challenges get handled aggressively. The prosecution laid out a hypothetical that mirrored the shooting almost exactly. A group of Diamond Street members playing football. A car speeds past. Words are exchanged. The oldest member, covered in tattoos, pulls a semi-automatic and fires 6 rounds. 3 hit the car. 1 strikes a child. As he leaves, he's singing. When asked what that meant in gang culture, the officer didn't hesitate. He said that kind of act isn't random. It's a message. Standing in the heart of their territory, flashing tattoos, firing a weapon, that tells the community one thing. They're armed. They're willing. They're not afraid. It also sends a message internally. It proves loyalty. It proves you'll pull the trigger over perceived disrespect. The officer explained that this kind of violence builds fear, and fear builds silence. When people believe a gang is armed and unpredictable, they don't call the police. They don't testify. They don't even ask them to move off the sidewalk. That silence becomes power. One of the most disturbing points came when the topic of the child was addressed. Most people would assume hitting a child would damage a gang's reputation. The officer argued the opposite. Even an unintended victim, especially a child, deepens the fear in the neighborhood. It cements the gang's violent image in people's minds for years. Then came Martin Flores. He wasn't a cop. He was the executive director of the Youth Opportunity Movement in Los Angeles. He actually testified for the defense. Flores works closely with probation, helping incarcerated individuals, many of them gang members, transition back into society. He supports crime victims. He builds programs aimed at keeping young people from falling into the same traps. His connection to the issue wasn't academic. His own younger brother was killed in a drive-by shooting. He grew up just east of Diamond Street's territory. He understood the neighborhood from both sides, but even while testifying on Astorga's behalf, Flores didn't sugarcoat anything. When asked about Astorga's affiliation, he said clearly that he was definitely a member of Diamond Street. By the time the testimony wrapped up, this wasn't just about a man who pulled a trigger. The jury wasn't only staring at one split-second decision, they were staring at the culture behind it, the code that shaped it, and the reality that a child had lost his life because of it. And when they finally walked back into that courtroom, you could feel the weight in the air. No more speeches, just the verdict, guilty, across the board. Astorga was convicted of first-degree murder, guilty of shooting into a vehicle, and the jury didn't stop there. They confirmed what prosecutors had been saying from day one. This wasn't random. It was done to benefit the Diamond Street gang. After the jury was dismissed, Astorga admitted something else. He had already served 3 prior prison terms. This wasn't his first run-in with the system. It was just the one that changed everything. But once the court clears out and the paperwork gets filed, what's left isn't just legal language. It's a family broken in a way that doesn't heal. Araceli Gonzalez Rojas still carries that day like it just happened. A full year passed, but her grief hasn't loosened its grip. When she speaks about her son, her words come out short and fragile, 2 or 3 at a time, like each sentence weighs too much to finish. Her son, Roberto Lopez Jr, was only 4 years old, a playful little boy who liked dancing around the house in his pajamas and cowboy boots. That's who he was, just a kid full of energy and noise, until a bullet ended that life just feet from his front door in Echo Park. Since that day, Araceli and her husband, Roberto, haven't been loud with their pain. They've carried it quietly, heavy, crushing, the kind of silence that fills a room. Inside their home, they built altars to cope, bright and colorful, made from marble, wood, wrapping paper, each one placed with purpose. One stands in the bedroom where Roberto used to curl up next to his siblings. Another sits in the living room where his grandparents still talk to his framed picture like he can hear them. And outside their duplex, there's an altar where neighbors stop by, heads bowed, remembering the little boy who should still be there. When sentencing approached, the judge offered the family a chance to speak directly to the man who took their son, but they knew they couldn't stand up and say it themselves. The pain was still too raw. Instead, they chose to write their words down and have someone else read them. Araceli explained it simply. They couldn't do it out loud, but she knew exactly what she wanted him to understand. She wanted him to see the damage, to see what his actions did to their family. She wanted him to tell his friends, tell the gangs to stop, to let families live in peace. When the sentencing day arrived, the court didn't show mercy. The judge handed Astorga 93 years to life in state prison. That number didn't come out of nowhere. It was built piece by piece. 25 years to life for first-degree murder, plus another 25 to life enhancement. 15 years to life for shooting at a vehicle, followed by an additional 25 to life enhancement, and 3 more years added because of his prior prison record. Stacked together, it added up to a lifetime behind bars. But the coldest moment in that courtroom wasn't the math, it was the message. The judge looked at Astorga and made it clear that prison time wasn't the only sentence he would carry. He told him he would have to live with what he had done for the rest of his life. And he left him with one final thought, that the reality of killing a child is something that should keep him awake at night. But this wasn't just another crime report people scrolled past and forgot about. Roberto's death felt different. It hit heavier. The neighborhood had already been hurting for years, and everyone knew it. Just 2 years earlier, a 9-year-old girl was killed by gang crossfire while standing in her own kitchen. And when you zoom out a little, it gets even harder to ignore. Since January 2007, there had been 60 homicides within just a 2-mile radius. At that point, it doesn't feel random anymore. It feels like a cycle, a pattern people were living with every single day. Normally, when violence pops off in that area, folks go into survival mode. Doors get locked early, windows shut tight, nobody talks to police, nobody stays outside once the sun drops. You mind your business and hope your address doesn't come up next. But after Roberto got killed, something shifted. People got tired. Instead of staying quiet, residents started calling in tips. Those calls helped police track down Astorga. At the boys' memorial, neighbors didn't just light candles and cry, they made a pact. Enough was enough. They wanted their block back. Some started showing up to monthly meetings with city officials and LAPD. A group of mothers even went down to City Hall together, walking those marble floors like they belonged there too. In one of Diamond Street's most notorious hotspots, a 35-year-old mother of 3 started doing something that used to feel unthinkable. When gang members gathered in her building's courtyard late at night, smoking, loitering, acting bold, she called the police. No more ducking her head, no more pretending she didn't see it. She even joked that officers knew her so well now they recognized her by the mole on her face. There was pride in that, not fear. City workers stepped in too. They went door to door handing out hotline numbers for residents to stick on their refrigerators. Trees got trimmed back to cut down on dark hiding spots. Programs popped up for kids, science fairs, resource events, even small concerts. Anything to give young people another lane besides the streets. The community center where Roberto used to play, the same one he was walking toward when he was shot, started talking about expanding, trying to grow something positive right where something terrible happened. But even with all that movement, fear still lingers like a shadow. At the community meetings, you can see it. People sit quiet. They don't always speak up because they're worried someone from the gang might be sitting a few chairs away, listening, taking notes in their head. Even the safe spaces have felt the pressure. The bright orange community center covered in murals had to shut down for a while because kids from gang-affiliated families were acting out and scaring the other children. Roberto's memorial altar, once on the sidewalk, had to be moved into his family's yard after gang members and drunks started hanging around it. Now his photo, his wooden cross, his little race cars sit behind a fence. You have to look through metal bars just to see his smile. Trisha Ward, who founded the center through art community land activism, spoke plainly about what she sees. There's a strange entitlement from some of these guys. They think living there means owning it, like the neighborhood answers to them. Picture one of those community meetings. About 50 people squeezed into a room at Roberto's preschool. Right in the front row sit his parents, Gonzalez Rojas and her husband, holding their 11-month-old son, Yair. Yair was born shortly after they buried their first child. That alone carries a weight no parent should have to hold. At the front of the room, LAPD officers and city officials take turns at the mic. The meeting is organized by Councilman Ed Reyes, who guides the whole thing like he's trying to keep a fragile balance. A 911 dispatcher explains exactly what happens when someone calls for help. A city prosecutor breaks down the legal maze that starts once charges are filed. A police captain urges anyone who feels mistreated by officers to step forward and file complaints. Then the room goes still, heads bow. Silence fills the air as everyone marks the anniversary of Roberto's death. You can almost feel the heaviness pressing down. Captain Stephen Ruiz, who oversees the Rampart area, tells the crowd that while the loss itself is tragic, the unity rising from it means something. He calls it a blessing in the sense that it pushed people to finally show up and talk to one another. Not every meeting is packed. Some nights only a handful of residents come, but Officer Lewis Ford says that's not the point. The point is they keep coming back, and there's proof it's making a dent. Since Roberto was killed, there hasn't been a single homicide in that 4-block stretch once dominated by Diamond Street. That's a serious shift. This was a gang known for attacking drivers who simply took a wrong turn into their turf. But lately, they've been losing ground. Some members are locked up, others moved away. New construction is changing the landscape, literally reshaping what they used to claim as theirs. That's part of why they've been defensive. They can see their grip slipping. Still, for families living there, the fear doesn't just vanish. Tara Hernandez, a mother of 3, thought about packing up and leaving after the shooting, but she ran into a hard truth. Anywhere she could afford would likely come with the same dangers. Different block, same problems. As she left one meeting, she admitted she's tried multiple times to walk up to Roberto's mother and offer condolences, but every time she stops herself. She knows she would just break down. She believes change is coming. She sees it inching forward, but it's slow, painfully slow, and deep down, everybody knows it shouldn't have taken the life of a 4-year-old boy to make a neighborhood finally stand up and fight for peace.